there's an M&M train. It's coming right there. So here's the deal. I'm at Banner Desert down in the Tempe Mesa area. My dad's in the hospital. It's serious. Obviously it's serious if you go to the hospital. But he could pull out of it. And it's tough seeing your folks get older. But it really got me thinking about my adoption story and trying to record a little of that while they're still here with us. Oh, the M&M train did not stop. Hold on.
Hi, and welcome to Yeti at Large. This is a channel focused on making the most out of what you have, no matter where you're at. Thanks for tuning in and helping out. So when you have a family member in the hospital, you do two things. You wander hallways and you think a lot. Many times you're either going straight to trauma by ambulance or you're trying to find their patient room, but then that inevitable moment comes when you need to go downstairs to find something to eat, and you get to the cafeteria, and then you realize you don't know the shortest way back to your family member's room. Well, my dad's in the hospital, and since he's 86, we have a lot of concerns, which got me thinking about my journey and being adopted, and all of those things that have happened in the last couple of years relating to that. So I wanted to share some of that with you while I had the time, especially in light of the modern debate about reproductive rights. So this is an adoption story. Full disclosure, this is my third attempt at trying to record this. The first time I rambled for 2 hours about thorns on trees and all this other nonsense. But I realized it's a simple story, and I'm one of the lucky ones. So are my two sisters. So I wanted to tell it in a lot more brief environment. I'm here at the hospital where my dad is right now, and I can't film just about anywhere where I'm going to be left alone and not potentially bother people. So I'm in a stairwell with a fire riser. That's what these things are. These power the sprinkler systems. I hope the audio isn't terrible. But like I said, this story, I'm fortunate. I hate the word lucky, but I'm fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate ones who wound up going through the adoption system exactly as it intended. Both my sisters had similar experiences, and I believe they would tell you that they're both very grateful for everything that happened to them, decisions that were made on their behalf outside of their immediate control. The win was 1967 when I was conceived. Of course, the summer of love and all that, but wasn't a hippie child. It was totally different than that. I discovered that I have roots in Alaska and in New York. But the where beyond Alaska and New York was here in Phoenix, Arizona. I was born in the 60s, raised in the 70s and 80s. I grew up in the Valley of the Sun. Couldn't have been a better place on planet Earth at that time to grow up. And for the record, we never really cared that it was hot. It was just the way things were, and that's what we grew up with, so we just dealt with it. My biological parents, whom I have found, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, came to Phoenix because you got to remember, in the 60s, an unwed pregnant mother really wasn't in the home. Things were very different back then. And apparently there were family connections from where my mother and biological father met, and they came to Phoenix to the Florence Crittenden home. And this is an amazing institution. I'll put a link down below. But the Florence Crittenden home was founded in the late 1800s by a wealthy New Yorker who lost a young daughter at an early age, and he was so grief-stricken that he wanted to build a home to help disadvantaged and wayward women, girls. And so basically the how of all of this is that both my biological mother and biological father traveled together but separately to Phoenix while she came to full term and delivered me. And then as soon as the adoption process was complete, they went their separate ways. And by all accounts, everybody did absolutely the best they could do under those circumstances and did right by me, and I'm very grateful for that. My mom and dad are the people who adopted me and raised me. I love them dearly, as does both my sisters. And that's my family. Those are the people that raised me. The irony is I'm 6.5 feet tall, blonde hair and blue eyes, and no one else in my family is even close to that. So it was pretty obvious I was adopted, and Mom told us ever since I can remember from a very early age the nature of our family and that we were loved very much. We never questioned it. I never had a problem with it, but it wasn't until I grew older that I started to really understand what that was like. And that's where we come into the main point of this, and I'll get to it quickly. But if you want to understand an adopted kid as much as anything, you've got to look at the nature versus the nurture. The nature of who you were, those innate characteristics you were born with, versus the nurturing, how you were raised and the environment you were raised in. I'll get to the conclusion of it all. I strongly believe it's both. My nature, which I discovered is very similar to my biological father after we met just a few years ago, is high speed, low drag. I'd go to the bottom of the ocean, I'd climb to the top of the mountain. I like to drive fast, I like to race mountain bikes, I climb trees, and very adventurous. Not reckless, but very adventurous, and also very hardworking with a high sense of justice. Those are my nature, and very similar to my biological father. Interestingly enough, the nurturing that I received, the people that adopted me, are Midwesterners, German descent, and they're very, very patient people, very deliberate, very focused on education, and that was the nurturing that I received growing up. The irony is that's exactly what I needed to offset my nature. But again, at the bottom of that, they have a high sense of justice. Take responsibility for your actions and your outcomes. Do right by people. Do right by yourself. And I found too, when I met my biological mother, that she exhibited many of those same qualities. So I think it's very interesting that the point where my nature and the nurturing connected was that sense of justice and doing right by people. It's defined a lot of my adult existence and where I'm at. My mom had strongly recommended that I try to find my biological family before I waited too long and all I found was a tombstone, which was good advice. And so I engaged the confidential intermediary program here in Arizona. I hope your country or your state has a similar program. I found it to be very effective, very affordable, and a pleasant experience. Now, I was braced that I may not find anything, may not even find a tombstone, if you will, but my confidential intermediary worked very hard, and she was able to find both of my parents, and through the process of anonymous introductions, was able to put us in touch, and we had some very pleasant conversations. One of the interesting things was my biological mother, I found her to be a very good person and very caring and a high sense of justice. And we enjoyed some good conversations. But I also picked up that there was a high likelihood, based on how guarded she was, that there was a lot she hadn't told her new family. So I didn't even discover if I have half siblings or where that lies. And I left it at that because I didn't want to push somebody out of their comfort zone. I'm debating on whether or not to send her the link to this video after it's posted. I would love your comments down below and your input on what you think I should do. On the opposite side though, my biological father, when we met, he was coincidentally diagnosed with a very serious cancer diagnosis in his lower jaw. And he was en route to very invasive, very high risk, very scary cancer surgery at the Huntsman Institute in Salt Lake City. I had made the decision that I wasn't going to just find this guy and then lose him to cancer without meeting him face to face. So I made the arrangements, and my better half and I flew to Salt Lake City, met him for the first time on the eve of his cancer surgery. And the similarities were profound. I'm much bigger than he is, but I'm going to chalk that up to good Midwestern nutrition.
And this is us minutes after meeting at the Salt Lake airport.
Sturdy guy, courageous, going into that life-saving surgery.
But it was a very pleasant visit, and I was very relieved to tell you that he came through the surgery and he's doing well to this day. It's been a couple of years now, and cancer-free diagnosis, so we're very happy for that.
Thank you to the fine people at Huntsman. Thank you.
So the reason I'm telling the adoption story is twofold. One, my dad's in the hospital, and while there's a good chance we're hoping he can come out of this, go to rehab, and come home, it's still pretty scary, especially he just turned 86 yesterday now. Like I said, this is the third time I've tried to shoot this video, and I hope this one makes more sense and is a little more cohesive than the last two. But the other reason I'm doing it is there seems to be such a raging debate right now over the definition and the sensibilities governing people's reproductive rights, choices, babies, all that kind of stuff. And I will tell you right now that at the end of this video, you will not have a clear definition of where I stand on this issue, beyond the fact that I'm going to tell you that I consistently demonstrate a profound respect for life in all conditions and in all stations, regardless of how many feet, legs, wings, fins that you have. So based on that, I wanted to tell my story so that if one person sees this video out of the three of you that might view it, tongue in cheek, that it might help you aim in a direction that's going to best suit you and your family. I'm one of the fortunate ones in an adoption scenario. There are many more like me, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you for tuning into Yeti at Large. Please, 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 if you found us based on this adoption thread alone, please put a comment down below. Please let me know what your inputs are, where you're from, how you found me, and if you have any inputs on my small story or want to tell a piece of your story, we would love to hear it. And if you disagree with something I've said, feel free to disagree, but do so civilly, and put a principle-based position forward first. Like I said, I'm not boxing anybody into a corner here. I'm just telling you my experience, and at the end of the day, my attitude is one of gratitude. I can't sit still anymore. Let's go explore some more at the hospital. Come on.
The Interfaith Chapel. Oh, that's cool. I'm not disturbing anybody, am I? How much do you want to bet? The Gideons. Rocky checked in, only to find Gideon's Bible. Gideon checked out and left it, no doubt, to aid with poor Rocky's revival.
This is the Harmony Garden. Are you supposed to put money in the little bubbling fountain? I don't know.
I did go to the gift shop, though. I asked him if I could buy a pair of time-traveling binoculars. They said they didn't know what I meant, but I told them I saw this World War II Marine looking through a pair of them at a World War I plane crash.
A 24-hour pie ATM. Who has a pie vending machine? How cool is that? And I start talking to a couple of customers there, and I find out that one customer that I meet standing next to me is a Yeti as well. Yeti Cooling. Brian Welch at Yeti Cooling. You were a good man, thank you. And I'm telling him what's going on and why I'm there. And Brian donates his punch card points to buy my dad a happy birthday pie. So I left quite a bit of money in the tip jar, but the gal behind the counter said I didn't have to. Irrelevant. Somebody once said, oh, small world. Well, guess what? It's always a small world when you have a big heart. Pie snob. Pie vending machine.